I welcome all members who have logged into the virtual mini-plenary session. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Honourable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitutes a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the microphones are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and where connectivity permits, connect your video. Members may make use of the icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist in alerting the chairperson to members requesting to speak. When using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessary points of order or interjections. Lastly, I wish to remind you that we are meeting in a mini-plenary session and therefore any decisions taken will be taken in a full plenary session of the Assembly. The first item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of Honourable W A S Aucamp on assessing the state response and policy gaps in addressing rural safety and food security in South Africa. The Honourable Aucamp.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Speaker, today we debate an issue that cuts to the heart of our nation's stability and food security. Assessing state response and policy gaps in addressing rural safety and food security in South Africa is of utmost importance and it must be addressed immediately. Agbare young speaker, wanneer die mense wat ons kos verbou nie veilig is nie, is niemand in ons land veilig nie. Ons landelike gemeenskappe is in gevaar. Boere, plaaswerkers en hulle gesinne leef onder voortdurende bedreiging van gewelddadige aanvalle. Die slagoffers van plaasaanvalle is nie net statistieke nie, hulle is menselewens, pilare van ons landbouekonomie en die bewaarders van ons nasionale voedselsekerheid. Die DA herhaal ons oproep tot dringende optrede om hierdie krisis die hoof te bied. Landelike veiligheid is sentraal tot ons ekonomie, tot werkskepping en tot voedselsekerheid in ons land. 'n Paar weke gelede het die minister van Landbou, John Steenhuisen, die saak van landelike veiligheid, plaasmoorde en veediefstal direk met die Amerikaanse president Donald Trump geopper. Dit was 'n noodsaaklike ingryping na jare se ontkenning van die probleem deur vorige ANC-regerings. For too long, the brutality of farm attacks, as well as the effect that it has on food security, has been ignored. But finally, this House has been forced to confront the truth. On the 21st of May this year, a joint parliamentary committee report on farm murders was adopted unanimously. For the first time, two key portfolio committees, that of Agriculture and Police, formally recognized that these attacks do happen and that it must be addressed urgently. This is a step in the right direction and the DA welcomes it. However, recognition without implementation is meaningless. Words do not stop bullets. Reports do not restore lives, and food is not produced in stores but on the farms in our country. We therefore need to do more to protect our farmers, farm workers, and people living in the rural parts of our country. When they are under threat, our food security is also under threat. Honourable Deputy Speaker, the DA has long been ahead of the curve in addressing rural safety. The DA's 10-point plan outlines the clear actionable reforms needed to secure our rural communities and safeguard our national food security. Firstly, we call for the establishment of a specialized rural safety unit within the South African Police Service, consisting of properly trained and resourced people solely focusing on combating rural crime, farm attacks, and stock theft. Secondly, we must urgently strengthen rural crime intelligence. We must improve data collection, intelligence networks, and cooperation between the police and local communities, which includes farm watchers and traditional leaders. Thirdly, we must tackle the crisis in the criminal justice system. Low conviction rates are sending a message to criminals that they can act with impunity. In May this year, the alleged murderers of Mr. Hendrik Venter, a farmer from Kuruman, were set free due to a lack of proper investigation by the police. We need prosecution-led investigations and real-time intelligence sharing with SAPS and the NPA. Fourthly, the uniquely brutal nature of farm murders, often involving torture and extreme violence, must be officially recognized and addressed accordingly. These are not ordinary crimes. They are targeted, premeditated acts that devastate families and communities. Fifthly, as Minister Steenhuisen said in the meeting with President Trump, farm attacks and stock theft must be declared as priority crimes. This will ensure the resources and urgency it deserves. Six, we must institutionalize partnerships with local stakeholders such as community policing forums, traditional leaders, and civil society who are active protectors of our rural fabric. Seventh, the SAPS must be empowered with forensic tools, skilled investigators, and a clear mandate to bring perpetrators to justice swiftly. Eighth, we need to repair the broken relationship between the police and the farming community. Trust and cooperation between them are non-negotiable. Ninth, we must support our emerging farmers through secure land ownership and financial support. It is them and not the state that must own the land that they farm on. And 10th, the DA will continue to oppose expropriation without compensation. It threatens investor confidence, destabilizes the agricultural sector, and ultimately jeopardizes jobs and food security. Agbare Speaker, plaasaanvalle raak nie net ons landbougemeenskap nie. Dit raak alle Suid-Afrikaners. Dit verwoes lewens, dit bedreig voedselsekerheid en dit vernietig werksgeleenthede. Die DA se standpunt is duidelik. Ons glo in 'n Suid-Afrika waar elke boer en plaaswerker, swart of wit, veilig is en waar ons land se voedselsekerheid beskerm word deur die beskerming van die mense op ons land se plase. As 'n nasie moet ons verenig in hierdie doel, in plaas daarvan dat ons verdeeldheid saai deur op verhoog te staan en veragtelike liedere soos Kill the Boer, Kill the Farmer sing. Die toekoms van voedselsekerheid en die veiligheid van die mense in ons landelike gebiede hang af van wat ons nou gaan doen. Die DA doen 'n beroep op die minister van polisie om onmiddellik op te tree om hierdie maatreëls te implementeer. Die DA sal nie rus nie. Ons sal aanhou veg vir 'n effektiewe landelike veiligheidsplan. Die mense op ons plase en in ons landelike gebiede verdien niks minder nie en ons kan hulle nie hierin versaak nie. Ek dank u.
The next speaker is the Honourable Ndalane.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise on behalf of the foremost liberation movement, the African National Congress, which inspired the seminal African claims in 1943, the Freedom Charter in 1955, and the constitutional principle for the democratic South Africa in 1991. This seminal and historical document form the fundamental of our beloved Constitution. On the occasion of this debate, allow me, Honorable Chair, to preface my input by recalling a critical principle of the Freedom Charter, which stipulates that all the land shall be redivided amongst those who work it to shortages and land hunger. It is important that we all understand the fundamental basis for this principle and why it remains relevant today. Honorable members, let us be reminded that settler colonialism remain the relevant and have arrived on our shores and thought conquest dispossessed the indigenous population of land and condemned our people to a life of landless and domination. I know many amongst us wants to forget this reality and deliberately whitewash the brutal and barbaric history of colonial apartheid and racism. We have not forget and we will never forget. Land dispossessions was ruthless, and through was war and dispossession, the passing of the Land Grey Act and subsequent Land Act of 1913, Africans were reduced to a tiny 13% of land, while the minority settlers enjoy 87% of arable land. It is because of this historical injustice that the Freedom Charter proclaimed that all the land shall be redivided amongst those who work it to shortages and land hunger. The racist regime robbed black people of their land and subjected them to poverty and rural underdevelopment. It continues to be the historical mission of the liberation movement to ensure that poverty is replaced with improvement, underdevelopment is replaced with development, despair is replaced with dignity. Under the ANC-led government, over 83,000 claims were settled and restored 3.8 million hectares of land of the rightful owners. We must make it clear for all to know that land is a factor of production. Therefore, access to land is a precondition for sustainable economic production and livelihood, including food security. It is for this reason that we must continue to pursue a redress and land justice systematically and comprehensively. The legislative instruments that are in place is in line with the Section 25 of the Constitution must be strengthened to ensure rapid land redistribution. We support the drive to accelerate land redistribution and reverse the injustice of the colonial apartheid era. We know that there are those who oppose this transformative legislative provision. We also know that there are those who cling to apartheid racist attitude. They continue to oppose land restitution. They continue to oppress and ill-treat farm workers. They illegally evict legitimate claimants and farm dwellers. We make no apology that such practices do not have a place in our democratic dispensation, underpinned by the rule of law. Our transformative legislative framework, those who continue such practices must face the full might of the law. Honorable members, we know that women do not enjoy full access to land, and this must change. The demand for access to land with full ownership rights for women is about land justice. Security of tenure for women is critical both in farms and in communal areas. The long overdue communal land bill must be urgently introduced in order to empower women to own and control land and related assets. Honorable members, we must create mechanisms for support of the land reform programs. And importantly, we must improve post-settlement support to ensure economic production on acquired land. This production capacity is important to maintain as a guarantee for food security and thriving agricultural sector. Under the ANC government, a total of 347 farms were supported through the Land Development Support Program between 2019 to 2024. This work must be intensified moving forward, and the GNU arrangement must not delay this work. On the contrary, it must be consolidated this progressive advance. Honorable Chair, 33% of the population reside in rural areas. The apartheid regime neglected underdevelopment and thus weakens rural communities. The democratic state must strengthen the resolve towards integrated rural economic development. We must support the revitalization of rural economies through the integrated rural development sector strategies of 2023, boosting investment, accelerating development, and prioritizing rural infrastructure such as electricity, water, and roads. The rural poor deserve decent services and economic development. Therefore, catalytic infrastructure must be rolled out in rural communities to ensure vibrant economic development in rural communities. Our rural communities must become the breakfast of the public and the entire continent. We must, as I conclude, Honorable Chair, Madam Chair, we must spare no effort in ensuring the realization of the Freedom Charter principle of striving to banish shortage and land hunger in our lifetime. I thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Nkritam.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The so-called GNU continues the apartheid agricultural relations, which are based on brutality against Black people and poisoning the population with genetically modified organisms for profit maximization. The commercial agricultural sector remains the bastion of naked racism and systemic violence against Black people. The oppressive relations inherited from the past continues in democratic South Africa. We must see the violence and exploitation behind the food we eat every day, which is produced by hungry people despite feeding the nation. The South African agricultural is defined by widespread physical and systemic violence against farm dwellers by white farmers. Since 1994, over 2 million Black people have been evicted from farms in what Professor Richard Levine calls ethnic cleansing. 2 million people evicted from farms. It is shocking that 90% of the maize, which is the staple diet of our people, is from genetically modified crops. White farmers are busy with genocide by food for profits. Little wonder our people suffer from so many chronic diseases. We are being poisoned every day. Russia and China have generally banned the consumption of genetically modified crops, and the European Union has banned the planting of GMO maize. South Africa is allowing farmers to practice this violence by poisoning the nation for profit. Why use poisonous GMOs when there is the healthy indigenous system of production? Is it because South African agriculture is colonial and overdetermined by violent culture of Europe? It puts profits before the people. Yes, farm workers are amongst the most food insecure sector of this population, of the nation. This, think again. They produce food, but they are hungry. How evil. South African agriculture is based on brutality and humanity. It only respects money. Just to demonstrate how profits are put before people, in the last quarter, white agriculture posted impressive numbers on food export earnings. This is in a country where over 15 million Black people suffer from food insecurity and about 7 million suffer severe food insecurity. Our people eat feet and heads of chicken. Whites eat drumsticks and breasts. We want the best part of the chicken as well. The progeny of Jan van Riebeeck have not paid reparations for genocide they have perpetrated against the Khoi and the San. They haven't even asked for forgiveness. We haven't forgotten. Ityala aliboli. The case for radical transformation of the agricultural sector is made by its weaknesses despite its self-proclaimed promotion as modernized and effective. It is actually economically unproductive, contributing only about 1 million very bad paying jobs when it can contribute 5 million safe, well paying jobs. White agriculture is structurally incapable of addressing the challenge of food security for national sovereignty. Take the chicken production as a case. South Africa imports large quantities of chicken from Europe, Brazil, and the USA. These white farmers are failing to produce chicken for domestic market. The MK party shall stop chicken imports and create massive chicken industry, which can create massive jobs and feed the nation. The biggest evidence of dysfunctionality of white agriculture is the fact that South Africa imports large quantities of maize for animal feed annually. This is madness. The South African white agriculture doesn't see Black people as human. It sees us as slaves and factors of production. We are seen in the same level as the ox. We must destroy this apartheid agriculture and replace it with a more humane, people-centered agricultural paradigm, which is driven by Ubuntu and indigenous knowledge systems, which can contribute over 20% to the GDP instead of the current just over 2%. The land in white hands is not working for the nation. There shall be no peace on our farms without radical land redistribution. Today, white farmers have so much power that every day they murder Black people with impunity. We all remember the evil deeds of murdering and feeding the bodies of 2 Black women to pigs in Limpopo recently. We have also seen the case of 3 young women ostensibly deliberately murdered by car in KwaZulu-Natal by a racist Boer. We remember them. The systemic violence on farms by white farmers was witnessed by firsthand by the Portfolio Committee on Land and Rural Development when we did an oversight in Wakkerstroom in Mpumalanga. Ubabu Kambule and his family live under constant violence by the white farmer who wants to evict them from their land. The Portfolio Committee witnessed firsthand the influence and control of the white farmers over the police when they called the station commander in the presence of the Portfolio Committee and asked, what were we doing at the home of Babu Kambule? Imagine. In Wakkerstroom, white farmers kill farm workers with impunity. The question is, where does this so much power come from to control the criminal justice system? It comes from land ownership, which gives the white farmer massive economic power, which is converted into power to control the criminal justice system in rural towns and dorpies. Often the police are induced by fear and bribes. We must still, as a nation, hold nationwide hearings to hear the horror stories of our people on farms, from Wakkerstroom to Ventersdorp. The GNU is incapable of ending the violence and oppression suffered by farm workers. Only an MK party government can bring peace and justice on farms. The MK party shall end the ongoing terror on farms by ending white farmers' racism, by giving land to farm workers, the real producers of food in South Africa. Take the land from the racist, and the racist becomes a peaceful citizen who respects Blacks. That's the future MK party is struggling towards. Peace, food, and prosperity for our people. It can be done, it shall be done. Waza.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Cameron.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Members, I rise today once again to demand that farm attacks and rural violence on both farmers and farm workers be prioritised as a matter of national urgency in our policing policy and security framework. Just earlier this week, I tabled a motion on behalf of the Democratic Alliance before this very House, not simply as a procedural act, but as a principled stand to call for farm attacks and rural crime to be designated as strategic priorities within the annual crime threat assessments and the operational planning of the South African Police Service. This is not only to protect the food producers of the country, but to defend every South African who labors in our agricultural heartlands under constant threat of violence. The data may show that murder is down overall by 12.4% in the last quarter, and while we welcome that decrease, we cannot ignore the unrelenting violence that rural communities continue to face each and every day. These are often not opportunistic crimes. They are calculated, they are brutal, and they often feature torture, rape, and execution-style killings. Many of these attacks are disproportionately violent, leaving their victims mutilated or tortured. In one of the most harrowing cases in our country's quite recent history, Willemientjie Potgieter's father was stabbed more than 150 times with a garden fork, amongst other things, an act of unimaginable cruelty that reflects a sadistic intent behind some of these crimes. I've personally spent time with survivors who were raped during attacks after being shot, and one elderly woman near Fochville had electric drill holes bored through her feet as a form of torture, and the list goes on. These attacks are not just crimes against individuals, they are attacks on the constitutional right to dignity, life, and to safety, and they are attacks on the very viability of our rural economy, on food security, employment, and national stability. Honourable members, the criminal justice response to rural crime has for far too long been fragmented and reactive. The rural safety strategy adopted with much fanfare remains inconsistently implemented and underfunded and without clear accountability. Crime intelligence in rural areas is scarce to non-existent. Rural police stations remain understaffed, under-resourced, and overwhelmed. And a recent SAP strategic briefing highlighted once again the need for an intelligence-led policing model to guide operations, a move that the DA wholeheartedly supports. But this must not remain in the realm of theory. It must translate into rural deployments backed by crime analysts, actionable intelligence, and swift prosecution-led investigations. What we have instead are rural police reservists that have been removed from service, sector policing that's virtually absent, and no specialized rural crime units to really speak of. During our oversight visits to specialized units, whether it's the flying squad or anti-gang units, it has become abundantly clear that in parts of SAPS, there is no real unified operational capacity to deal with the crisis of rural crime. Vehicles often lie broken in garages, critical posts remain unfilled, and unit commanders are operating with outdated technology, poor morale, and no clear directives for flailing senior management. Deputy Speaker, we must no longer ask whether rural safety should be prioritized. It's so obvious that it must. We must now ask why this hasn't been done already. It is a failure in some parts by parts of the South African Police Service management, a symptom of poor planning and unwillingness to align our operational footprint with our national priorities and best interests. One of the most disgraceful illustrations, as one of the previous speakers mentioned, of the systemic failure is the case of 81-year-old Hendrik Venter, who was violently murdered on his farm in Kuruman in the Northern Cape in September 2024. He was found with 3 deep stab wounds to the head, a horrifying example of brutality that some of these rural citizens face. SAPS activated its much-touted 72-hour activation plan and arrested all 5 suspects within days. But instead of justice, what followed was a complete collapse in investigative rigor. Forensic delays, missing documentation, and prosecutorial failures compounded until, in May 2025, the case has now been struck from the court roll. The suspects were all released, not because they were found innocent, but because the state failed to be ready. Another brutal farm murder followed by institutional indifference. It's simple to say then that it is not justice, it's a disgrace. And to make matters worse, some politicians from radical parties continue to openly sing about or romanticize the killing of farmers, while the extremist supporters celebrate these attacks on social media. This kind of hate-filled incitement does not embolden perpetrators, it simply undermines our constitutional democracy. We therefore call on the Minister to direct SAP to do the following. 1. Include farm attacks in SAP's annual crime threat analysis and station operational plans as a priority crime. Establish dedicated rural crime capability or capacity within the DPCI. Fully implement a revised intelligence-led and evidence-based rural safety strategy in close partnership with local farm watchers and community structures. 4. Fully restore the hollowed-out SAPS reservist program in rural areas with a focus on recruitment of firearm-competent, well-vetted members of rural communities. And 5. Report quarterly to this House on rural crime data, prosecutions, and resource allocations to combating this scourge, with a renewed focus on prosecution-led investigations to ensure that arrests lead to convictions and justice. Deputy Speaker, I close by reminding the House that a government that cannot secure its farms cannot feed its people. This is not a cry for special treatment. It's simply a call for equal protection under the law. For every farm worker, every farmer, every family, and every dependent. We owe them more than just sympathy. We owe them to keep them safe. And so far, we've been failing. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Mohlala. Honourable Mohlala, EFF.
No, thanks so much, Chairperson. Let me take the opportunity and greet the President and the Commander-in-Chief of the EFF, Julius Malema, Commissars, Ground Forces, and fellow South Africans. House Chair, South Africa femicide crisis is not a tragedy of fate. It is a direct consequence of government neglect, incompetence, cowardice, and systematic failure. Every day, women are abandoned by the justice system that is broken, underfunded, and corrupted to the core by politicians who are driven by their narrow self-interest. Chairperson, before I proceed, actually, is the topic about the femicide?
Honourable Member, this is the topic on the policy and gaps in addressing rural safety and food security.
I'm not the speaker there. So, let me speak to our members. I think Honorable Matthias is the speaker for this.
Okay, thank you. The table was informed it will be you, but let's just check. Honourable Matthias, are you the speaker?
I'm the speaker on the second topic here, the one that is coming after this one. Thanks so much.
Honourable Matthias.
Yeah, no, thanks, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Let me greet the Commander-in-Chief. Let the table staff really take their work seriously. We have submitted our name, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, this is a sponsored topic for spectacle purposes only, brought by one certain Aucamp, a member of the DA, a representative party, and a mouthpiece for established and big commercial firms. This sponsored topic is premised on the false argument that it is white commercial farmers only who produces food, who are victims of farm killings, which are disproportionately against white farmers. South Africa's history shaped farming into two-part dual system, large-scale commercial farming and small-scale commercial farmers. Both types are important in the agricultural economy. Mr. Aucamp speaks on behalf of the former and does not pretend to attempt to do the same for small-scale subsistence farmers because the latter, in his world outlook, is non-existent. More importantly, it is insignificant because it is predominantly black and peasantry in culture, an apartheid system sought to dismantle that system. More than it being insignificant, according to Mr. Aucamp, it is a hindrance to rural safety and food security, as it competes with well-established and adequately resourced white commercial farming sector, with capital and transport produce quickly from farm to pack houses, market access, and trade with both local and international markets. A small-scale farmer from the same location does not have capital, no transport, no any form of government subsidy, and sells the produce at local market at farm gate prices. What a travesty of justice. The existence of these two systems remains a sign of injustice and inequality. South Africa's effort to reform land redistribution have tended to focus on this duality with bias towards commercial side of agriculture. These are structural gaps and the legacy of apartheid and colonialism Mr. Aucamp will never dare to mention. The 2022 census showed us that 13.8% or close to 2 million of all households nationally were agricultural households, meaning most of them are found in rural areas in farms. Further, about 89.2% of all agricultural households was leading location of agricultural activity by agricultural households nationally. Farmland and communal land were 5.3 and 3.4 respectively. What these results show is the extent to which many households in South Africa are willing to produce, to an extent that backyard production is the highest amongst agricultural households. They resort to backyard because of landlessness.
Today on
apartheid land dispossession. Therefore, we can all agree
apologies,
phase of
Honourable
land
Matiasi.
redistribution.
My apologies. Could I please ask members to mute? My apologies. Please proceed.
What these results show is the extent to which many households in South Africa are willing to produce, to an extent that backyard production is the highest among agricultural households. They resort to backyard because of landlessness, a legacy of colonial and apartheid land dispossession. Therefore, we can all agree that slow pace of land redistribution is one of the major risks for food security in the country. To defeat food insecurity, land ownership patterns and production relations need to be transformed. We need a targeted program of land redistribution with transparent beneficiary selection to guard against elite capture, especially organized commercial interests that would wing land reform beneficiaries into joint ventures which do not benefit the poor. The land redistribution program, where the market dictates what land is available for redistribution, cannot result in a meaningful impact on food security and livelihood improvement of the poor. A case in point here is that of Mr. Mlungisi Nkambule in relation to rural safety. His case is a microcosm of bigger problem faced by farm labor tenants and farm workers in this country. Some of the most violent forms of abuse are meted out against labor tenants by white farm owners. Honorable Deputy Speaker, against this problem is indicative of the extent to which government is biased towards commercial farmers who can be joined state diplomatic delegation to Washington and express at the expense of the people like Mr. Nkambule. And these delegations peddle lies about genocide against white farmers. Again, Deputy Speaker, the abuse of labor tenants and farm workers is more expressed through the collaboration between the police, the magistrates, and these private security companies using tactics and styles of commandos, which according to the law have long been phased out and regarded as illegal in this country. This space where police and farm owners and magistrates collaborate must be confronted, as this has been observed in Wakkerstroom by the Portfolio Committee on Land and Rural Development in Mpumalanga province. Secure tenure for labor tenants and farm dwellers by settling all the labor tenants' claims and implementing Section 4 of the ESTA, which is about on-farm development on land that farm occupiers.
Thank you, Honourable Matiasi. Your time has expired.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Zondo.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, Freedom Party to address the matters at the heart of our nation's well-being and dignity. The dire state of rural safety and the worsening crisis of food security. Let's begin by stating that plainly, the government response in rural safety and food security has been inadequate and inconsistent, and in the reality of our rural communities. The peoples of rural South Africa, farm workers and rural dwellers feel the effect of the outcry. Every week we hear of the brutal farm attack, violence in isolated communities, and the policing system that is under-resourced, under-trained, and overstretched. Our rural areas soft target for criminals, and the state response remain reactive for years for the specialized units which were disbanded in the early 2000s. Units with local knowledge and rapid response capacity are essential for meaningful action. What we get instead are generic policing and
Seems that we do have a problem with Honorable Zondo.
Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Maki.
Yes, Honorable Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the IFP to address a matter that strikes at the heart of our nation's well-being and dignity in dire states of rural safety and the worsening crisis of food security. Let me begin by stating this plainly. The government's response to rural safety and security, food security, has been inadequate, inconsistent, and disconnected from the lives reality of our rural communities. The people of rural South Africa, farmers, farm workers, and rural dwellers feel abandoned, and the facts support their outcry. Every week we hear of brutal farm attacks, violent crime in isolated communities, and a policing system that is under-resourced, under-trained, and overstretched. Our rural areas have become soft targets for criminals, and the state response remained reactive instead of preventive. For years, we have called for the reintroduction of specialized rural safety units, which were disbanded in the early 2000s. These units with local knowledge and rapid response capability and essential for meaningful protection. What we get instead are generic policing. What we get instead are generic policing plans and hollow promises, where still the national rural safety strategy exists largely on paper, implementations and fragmented, and lacks integration with other crisis departments. Where is the accountability? Where are the measures, outcomes? The right to food is entrenched in Section 27 of our Constitution, yet more than 20 million South Africans are food insecure, many of them in rural areas where food is produced. We believe that food security must be treated as a strategic national priority, not just as an afterthought in speeches and strategy documents. The collapse of agricultural expansion services, lack of support for emerging farmers, corruption is lack of reform, and an erratic approach to climate resilient are widening the gap between policy and hunger. Honorable Speaker, without rural development, there is no food security, and without safety, there is no rural development. The Department of Agriculture and the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development must not operate in silos, nor should the South African policy services and local municipalities. This lack of coordination reflects a deep policy gap, not just in what is written, but in how government functions. We need to invest in rural infrastructure to unlock agricultural potential. We need to offer support for community policing forums and rural neighborhood watches with real resources, not just lip services. We need fast-track land tenure reform that provides secure titles to smallholders, encouraging investment and productivity. We believe in empowering communities, respecting tradition, and supporting enterprise. We believe in the dignity and those who work the land. We know that rural South Africa is not a problem, but a powerful engine for growth and stability. We urge the state to listen, act, and deliver. In conclusion, we do not seek to we offer solutions drawn from the experience and grounded in reality. But let us not pretend that things are better than they are. Rural safety is the crisis. Food insecurity is rising, and policy as it stands, it's falling short. The IFP stand ready to lead the change South Africa to desperate needs. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I don't have a name of a speaker for the PA, but let me just make sure. Is there a speaker for the PA? I don't see anyone. We will then proceed. Honourable members, please mute yourselves. The next speaker then is the Honourable Minister of Correctional Services.
Dankie, agbare adjunct speaker. Speaker, I think it is most important that we do understand the history of farm murders in South Africa. And I want to go back to the 90s, where the then President Nelson Mandela requested the leader of the Freedom Front, General Constant Viljoen, to come forward with a strategic plan to curb farm murders in South Africa. Not because of the fact that President Nelson Mandela favored or special treatment for farmers, but because he understood the importance of the farming community and the agricultural sector on the economy of South Africa. In the party, we allowed General Viljoen and we released him of his responsibilities for 3 months, and he came forward with a comprehensive strategic plan. Although the government after that was reluctant to follow what was the recommendation of that plan. In 2003, the then National Commissioner of Police, Jackie Celebi, came forward with a comprehensive report on farm attacks, which is available. And in that report, it is acknowledged that there are political motives when it comes to farm murders. And over the years, we must also acknowledge the fact that farming communities then started to look after their own safety and prevention of crime and farm murders. In the 90s, on average, we had more than 100 farm murders. And we cannot deny the fact of farm murders. The names are there. At Nampo, there are more than 2,800 names on the wall of remembrance of farmers killed. And then in 2012, then the police came forward with a strategic plan for rural safety. It continued, but it lacked implementation. Agbare adjunct speaker, in 2017 het ek daarin geslaag om vir die eerste keer 'n debat van nasionale belang in die nasionale vergadering oor plaasmoorde te laat plaasvind. Die wreedhede wat daarmee gepaard gaan het ek uitgelig. Dit is beskikbaar. En die feit van die saak is dat dit kan nie gewone misdaad wees as ons gaan kyk na daardie wreedhede wat gepaard gaan met plaasmoorde nie. En feitelik al die partye in die nasionale vergadering op daardie stadium het saamgestem dat plaasmoorde behoort 'n prioriteit te geniet en dan moet behoorlik aandag daaraan gegee moet word. In 2018, toe het die polisie na vore getree met 'n opgedateerde strategiese plan, maar steeds moet dit geïmplementeer word. Ek wil afsluit, agbare adjunct-speaker, om te sê, I want to compliment the present Minister for Police because he makes use of the farm watches that can fight crime for rural areas. And we must strengthen that cooperation. Ons moet hande vat om misdaad in die platteland te kan bestry. Die boere en hulle werkers, almal speel 'n belangrike rol om dit te verseker. Let us say to each other, a farm murder is an injury not only to the economy of that rural area, but to the economy of South Africa. I thank you.
Next speaker is the Honourable Leklape.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise on behalf of Action SA, and the latest crime statistics show an alarming and sustained instance of rural crime. The incidence of mass murders in rural communal communities is of special concern. Farm murders of farmers and farm workers remain a matter of national and international concern. The South African delegation led by President Ramaphosa and his hand-selected team corroborated before the world how violent our society has become. The South African journalist, Helen Wasserman of News 24, business editor, wrote a story about this interaction entitled Ramaphosa Trumped in Washington, where we observed, for the casual observer, it was difficult not to debunk that South Africa is a crime-ridden country at war with itself. These issues all militate against rural safety and food security, as well as accelerate our unprecedented urbanization in South Africa. What we cannot afford, Deputy Speaker, is to exceptionalize. Crime is a problem in all of South Africa, affecting all of us. All lives matter. Yesterday, I was at the memorial service of Honorable Sithole, brutally killed in an urban environment at a launch of a branch of the Inkatha Freedom Party. Crime is endemic in our country. What we cannot afford is to make one life more important than another. We fully agree. You need special strategies for the categories of crime. As was exposed in the White House, the highest areas of crime are in gangland. Is that not a priority? So all should be prioritized. But what we should refrain from is to exceptionalize. What we should refrain from is to talk about the brutality of particular matters, like we are inferring that others are gently put out of their misery. Honorable Sithole was pumped with 12 bullets. My daughter had multiple stab wounds. They all matter. We need a strategy that is focused on all of us. It can be special on the types of matters. And what we need to do, Deputy Speaker, is to look at the causative factors. We can't be looking at the end game when someone has died. If we're going to reduce crime in this country, we need to look squarely at the factors contributing to those. Farm workers are just as important as farmers. Black farmers are just as important as white farmers. When we still have people mowing down children in their cars and claiming that they mistook them for animals, we have a long way to go. Crime affects all of us, and we need to stand together and not exceptionalize. And we in Action SA have highlighted how our police are underfunded, whether it's rural, whether it's urban. We have a crisis in our country, and would like the police minister to come forward, and would like Parliament to fund a properly funded, skilled police force. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I don't have any names on the list, but just to make sure that there are not any speakers, UDM. We proceed.
Not
ATM.
speaking on this one, Chair. Not speaking on this one.
Thank you, Honourable Kwankwa. ATM? Not. Then Honourable Davids.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise today on behalf of the ANC. Deputy Speaker, I rise today on behalf of the ANC to assess how far we have come in building vibrant, equitable and sustainable rural communities with food security for all, as called for by the Freedom Charter. We recall the Charter splits that the state shall help the peasants with implements, seed trackers and dams to save the soil and assist the tillers. Over the past 30 years, an ANC-led government has worked tirelessly to realize that vision. We have dramatically expanded social protection and rural deployment, lifted millions out of hunger and grow our agricultural sector while laying the foundation of further progress. Our social protection system, administered by SASSA, now reaches over 18 million South Africans. This network of pensions, disability grants, child support, and other assistance makes South Africa's social grants program one of the largest in Africa. These grants have been a lifeline for poor families, contributing to reducing hunger and vulnerability. At the same time, the ANC policies have provided meaningful support to agriculture. In May 2022, the Department of Agriculture, Land Reform and Rural Development signed the Agricultural and Agro-Process Master Plan with business and labor to drive inclusive growth in farming. As President Ramaphosa noted in Parliament, our land reform and rural development programs have coincided with an average growth of 4.2% per annum in agriculture and employment in roughly 985,000 people in the sector. This shows that even as we transform land ownership, we are also growing the economy and creating jobs. Much of this success rests on support for small and emerging farmers. Through agri-parks and rural infrastructure, the government has built farmer support units, agri-hubs, and irrigation schemes in our villages. We have upgraded dozens of irrigation projects and deepened access to water so that even subsistence farmers can boost production. To help our people till the land, more than 180,000 input vouchers were issued to subsistence producers in the last financial year, and over 62,000 subsistence and smallholder farmers received training and extension support through programs like the Presidential Employment Stimulus. These efforts align with the master plan goals of giving Black small-scale farmers better access to markets. Indeed, the plan explicitly encourage support to Black farmers and agro-processing SMMEs so they can reach domestic and export markets. In practice, this has been linking smallholders to grain farmer associations, livestock cooperatives, and food processing ventures. We have also incentivized large commercial farmers to partner with emerging farmers through land donation and joint ventures to broaden participation in agriculture. The results are encouraging expanding production of stable crops, more diversible farming, and rising agro-processing. Importantly, this has happened alongside the ANC investment in broader rural development. Our integrated rural development strategy 2023 focused on rural roads, bridges, water systems, schools, and clinics to support farming communities. We are also empowering rural youth through skills programs such as NARISEC, which have placed over 1,100 young people in rural development projects this year. Altogether, government efforts have helped maintain almost 1 million farming jobs, with the social partners projecting that by 2030, agricultural output could rise an extra 32 billion beyond business as usual if all master plan interventions are implemented. Alongside agricultural support, the ANC has expanded the social wage for rural people. A 2021 World Bank review noted that our social grants help project vulnerable people and ensure they can meet their basic needs. For example, the Unemployment Social Relief of the Stress Grant provides a monthly payment to unemployed and vulnerable adults. The Department of Social Development is now proposing to make the SRG grant permanent and to move towards a basic income support scheme. This will be in line with the ANC commitments to progressively realize a basic income for the poor. Crucially, government is also ensuring that the grant beneficiaries are linked to job and training. A recent interdepartment workshop affirmed the need to link the policy beneficiaries to the employment and sustainable livelihood opportunities. In other words, social assistance is a bridge to self-reliance, not a lifetime dependency. The ANC government has also taken steps to ease the high cost of living for rural households. For more than a decade, we have provided free basic water and electricity to impoverished families. In the latest budget, 61 cents of every rand are devoted to the social wage, funding free basic services, schooling, healthcare, and housing for the needy. We also push for vet policies that protect poor families. Originally, the 2025 budget proceeded expanding the zero-rate food basket, including items like dairy blends and canned veggies, to low-income households, even though the VAT increase was subsequently scrapped. The principle remains that necessities should not be taxed at the cost of the poor. Despite this, progress gaps remains. Our technical support to farmers must be strengthened. Too many small farmers still lack extension offices, modern inputs, or post-harvest facilities to reach commercial scale. We must continue to rehabilitate and expand rural infrastructure, more irrigation schemes, rural roads, and logistics, so that villages can get products to market without spoilage. In social protection, we need to advance the basic income deliberation so that in time all poor households have a reliable flow of support. Perhaps most importantly, any expansion of grants must be accompanied by opportunities. The ANC has already linked social assistance with employment stimulus. We must scale this up. Programs like NARISEC, the Presidential Employment Stimulus, and agricultural labor hubs should be deepened so that the grant recipients learn skills, work in agri-businesses, or start their own enterprises. This would fulfill the ideal of transforming beneficiaries into active participants in the economy. The ANC-led government has committed to reducing the cost of production for farmers by supporting them with modern technology to ensure low-cost production and food safety. Honorable members, the ANC is motivated by the words of our founders and the Freedom Charter, promise of freedom from want. We remember Chief Albert Lutulu's teaching that real liberty means being free from hunger just as much as free from oppression. The ANC record growing agriculture by 4.2% per year, with nearly 1 million jobs, sustaining the largest social grant system on the continent, and adding hundreds of thousands of small farmers, shows our commitment to that cause.
Thank you,
but
Honourable
we do not
David.
rest on past.
Madam
Madam Deputy Speaker, in closing, let us reaffirm our mission in the spirit of the Freedom Charter. We pledge to banish hunger and ensure a better life for all. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable David. Could I also just ask that Honourable Muraka just deactivate her video? We are seeing your video on the screen. We then proceed, Honourable Ghana.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker,
Honourable Ghana, my apologies. Members, please mute yourselves and only switch on your video if you are speaking. Please proceed, Honorable Ghana.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, we are debating this matter of rural safety. Our Constitution, in Section 12, guarantees everyone the right to freedom and security of the person. This includes the right to be free from all forms of violence, whether public or private sources. But rural communities across South Africa, neck and white, face real threats. Stock theft, for instance, continues to devastate livelihoods. For many small-scale and emerging farmers, the loss of just a few cattle can destroy years of work and time. It is not just an economic crime, it is a crime against survival. The state has a constitutional obligation to ensure the safety of all people. This includes proper resourcing of rural police stations, better intelligence gathering, faster response times, and effective rural policing strategies. However, we must be clear and honest. There's no white genocide in South Africa. That myth is not only false, but it is dangerous. In conclusion, I want to say that rural safety is not a white issue, a black issue, a political tool. It is a South African issue. It is a human issue. Let us work together across race, class, and political lines to build rural areas where security is a right enjoyed by all, not a privilege of a few. I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Ghana. Honorable Smith.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Members and fellow South Africans. Today I speak to you about an issue that cuts to the very heart of our country, our rural communities, our farmers, and the future of food security in South Africa. South Africa's rural economy is built on the backs of farmers and their farm workers, both large-scale commercial producers and the countless subsistence farmers who feed their families and neighbors through hard work, resilience, and hope. But these communities are under siege. Samatomo, bohudu bja di pofolo le mehutauta ya mengwe ya bohodu bofetugile tloka boroko ho balemi ba boipedisho. Ho motu yo a lekago go epedisha ka mobu wa go tloka puno. Go utswiwa ga gomo eti go ba dipudi tsa malwa. Ga tloba boroko fela ke tlašego. Se se ka raya gore mafetso a go patela diheto tsa ngwana go potlama ga polokego ya dego ya ba
Honorable Smith, if you can just pause for a moment. Honorable Nkutam, what point are you rising on?
On a point of order, just for the Honorable to explain what language he is using. We can't follow him.
Thank you, Honorable Nkutama. Honorable Smith, please proceed.
Thank you very much, Chair. Se ya raya gore mafetso a go patela diteto tsa ngwana go potlama ga polego ya dijo go ba tatlego ya masheleng a go reka dipeo tsa setla sa puo se latelago. Go ya ka tshekatsheko ya SAPS go bogile melato ya dikete tse masomo tshela tsa bogodu jwa diphoofolo ngwageng o tee. Raya tseba gore dipalo-palo tsa ga dira emele ga botlhoko simo se. Malapa a mmalwa magaeng ga a sa bega bogodu gobane ba latlhegetsweng ke tshepo. Go fela ga tshepo go tsebodišo ya tsa ba molao ke kotsi. Ge se šupa gore balemi be arena be a bogelego kotsi ba tlolewa thoko. Pepeneng le go pelelwa ke go tswa boding. Secondly, we must speak openly about the human cost, particularly when a farmer is murdered. Too often the headlines focus only on the tragedy of the individual loss, but the impact ripples outwards. It devastates the workers employed by that farmer. Jobs are lost, livelihoods vanish overnight. Many of these workers support extended families, grandparents, children, and even neighbors. A single act of violence can plunge dozens into economic despair. People start to leave the land. Children grow up believing farming is dangerous and not worth the risk, and erode the future of our rural economy. Thirdly, the financial toll of safety is driving many farmers to the brink. Infrastructure such as security fences, surveillance systems, even guards and armed response services are now necessary and survival tools. Some commercial farmers are reportedly spending hundreds of thousands of rands annually to protect their families and produce. These costs add to the price of food for everyone, from the housewife in the northern suburbs of Joburg to the gogos in townships. It drives up the cost of doing business in agriculture, discouraging investment and slow the growth we desperately need to create jobs. Food insecurity worsens, inequality deepens, and our economy suffers. But there is hope with the DA in government, and it lies in innovation. Emerging technologies like low-orbit satellite internet by companies such as Starlink are transforming what's possible in rural safety and development. For too long, rural communities have been left behind in the digital age without basic communication in time of emergency. Thanks to the DA Minister Solly Malatsi innovation to open up the market, even the most remote farms can be connected. Motion sensors can send live data to farmers' phones. Drones can patrol perimeters. Security networks can be coordinated across farms, linking rural policing forums with technology. And when crimes occur,
Thank you,
they
Honourable
can be
Member. Your time
reported
has
immediately.
expired.
It is let us protect our farmers, empower our communities, and secure the
Honourable Member,
future
your
of
time has
rural. Thank you.
expired. The Honourable Moela.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, and greetings to all honorable members. As the ANC, we deplore the cold-blooded killings that have been taking place on farms and rural areas across the country. We must never be comfortable with normalizing farm and rural murderers and never categorize them as yet another future of South African life. Beyond the immediate human suffering and lack of stability and security, the killings in the farming communities cause a severe disruption to our economy. Farms employ a sizable number of the population, and killings mean farms closing down, a lack of growth, production, a loss of wages and profits. This essentially means that profits are lost, people lose jobs, and this threatens food security and poverty position. Though we acknowledge the panic and frustration caused by the attacks, I argue that we have sufficient policies and legislation to promote rural safety, although we are lagging behind with the implementation plans. The National Rural Safety Strategy is the main crime prevention approach to address the needs of the rural and farming community. The strategy is based on the principles of community policing, sector policing, and integrated cooperation of stakeholders. It aims to support food security, economic development, and rural development. The strategy entails community safety awareness, effective communication, investigation, and prosecution. like any other strategy, it has its limitations and its shortcomings and requires a collaborative effort for its full implementation. That is why we have made it a reviewable process to assess new trends and modify the strategy to respond to those new challenges. This success of the rural safety strategy requires a greater coordination between police, farm owners, and farm workers, traditional leaders, and members of the community. Additionally, in this seventh administration in the South African Police Services is in the process of passing the Stock Theft Amendment Bill 2025, which aims to categorize stock theft as a priority crime and introduce stricter penalties and more dedicated resources. More interestingly, the Stock Amendment Act to strengthen border policing operations and cooperation with neighboring countries in order to respond to the growing challenges of cross-border theft. Farmers are providing a valuable service in our economy, which is vital for food security. It is vital for them to operate in a safe environment, and the state has a responsibility to protect those farmers. They claim that violence on farm is part of an orchestrated campaign that is meant to drive white farmers off their land is simply not borne out by facts. Research indicates that a majority of farm attacks are mainly carried out to be robbery and not for targeting white farmers. In other words, farm attacks are not racially motivated. In the same breath, honorable members, we must not be naive and assume that the race relation and working relations in the farming communities are harmonious. In my previous debate in this house, I took the house through the gruesome incident of a white farmer shooting two black farm workers and feeding them to his pigs. These are the open and honest conversation we must not shy away from when addressing farm attacks. We need to invest in rural development and tackle the severe poverty and inequality that persists in farming communities. The systematic nature of stock theft charges a direct crime on agriculture and the livelihoods of farmers. A coordinated anti-stock theft operation conducted in the Eastern Cape during the month of May has yielded some positive results and led to the recovery of suspended stolen livestock. 231 cattle, 81 sheep, and 78 goods were recovered in that operation. The animals are currently being held in stockpiles while awaiting the lawful owners to come forward with identification and claims. In matters of stock theft, we need to see more police visibility and deterrence. The stability of society should not be marked by how many criminals were apprehended, but should be measured by its deterrence and low levels of crimes. As a deterrence, we need to encourage the branding of livestock, and this assists with identification and convictions. According to the Animal Identification Act, all cattle, sheep, goats, ostriches, pigs, and horses must be branded with an identification mark. On the view that stock theft in South Africa is organized crime, we call on the police to take serious and investigate the allegations of police who are suspected to be working with these criminals. We need to restore public confidence and policing services. The police cannot be part of the problem. Service in rural areas remain a challenge for the police due to the geographical locations. By design, the isolatedness and vast spread out design of farms and rural areas make them more opportunistic to violent crimes. Geographically, farms and rural areas are very diverse, with difficult roads, mountains, very large and expensive areas. These are often serviced by one nuclear police station, which is not adequately resourced to service all the areas and provide a timely response. It is in this breath that we continue to reiterate the need for adequate budgeting, capacitation, and resourcing of rural police stations. We require adequate resource allocation to rural police stations and stock theft units, and we need this to be included in the National Resources Plan of the South African Police Service. We need adequate vehicles and crime prevention equipment, e.g. police in metros can drive smaller vehicles, while in rural areas they will require larger vehicles and more animal power to do job. We also call for community collaborations, community policing forums, and working relations with the traditional authorities to expand this police reach. As I conclude, honorable members, The ANC condemns these barbaric acts of violence as they undermine our ability to develop a prosperous agricultural sector that plays a significant role in rebuilding and developing our economy. We should not take the spreading of the situation as it was presented in the Oval House in the United States of America. We must put on record that there is no political campaign to drive off white people from their farming land in South Africa. Such accusations are dangerous and threaten the functionality of our economy. The ANC remains committed to build a non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous society. We must refuse the notion that there is white genocide in South Africa. That simply does not exist, and South Africa belongs to all who live in it as provided for in our policies and legislation. I thank you, honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Moela. Honorable Aucamp.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, today... Speaker, please protect
Honorable
me.
members, please, my apologies, Honorable Aucamp. Members, please mute your microphones. Please proceed, Honorable Aucamp.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Today, we once again witness the difference between the builders and the breakers in our country. On the one hand, we have got those of us who are looking to find solutions for the threats that our farmers, black and white, are facing daily. And on the other hand, there are those in this House who are again trying to spew racial division in our country instead of finding solutions to the crisis that we face. Let me be clear. When we ask for our farmers and farm workers to be protected, we are talking about all races. It is not only white farmers or white farm workers that are under threat and killed. It is black farmers and black farm workers as well. It seems to me that the Honorable Nkitama and Matiasi did not truly understand what this debate is about. Instead of providing solutions, they are again racializing farm safety. Honorable Nkitama even want farmers not to feed their animals because people are hungry. Can the Honorable Nkitama imagine how people will suffer and how hunger will increase if they cannot get any protein through meat just because Honorable Nkitama said that animals must not be fed? Go and tell that to the cattle farmer in Kagoeng and Bankara who wants to farm with his cattle, that he should not feed them because there are people going hungry. What an absurd statement. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the United Nations General Assembly, of which South Africa is a member state.
Honorable Aucamp, if you can just pause for a moment. Honorable Aucamp, there is a point of order. Honorable Nkitama, which point are you rising on?
Can this member of the Racist Democratic Alliance withdraw? At no point have I ever said that animals must not be fed. Where have I ever said that?
Thank you, Honorable Nkitama. We will look into that matter. Honorable Kawula.
Thank you,
Honorable Kawula. What point are you rising on?
No, I want to find out to that, Honorable, it's the first time to hear about that thing. So there is a white man was killed.
Honorable Kawula, that is not a point of order.
And our black people put in the crown of pig.
Honorable Kawula, you are not raising a point of order now. You are entering into a debate. Honorable Aucamp, please proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, this
Honorable
again...
Kawula, I have ruled on the matter. Could the table please just mute the Honorable Kawula? Thank you. Honorable Kawula. Honorable Aucamp, please proceed.
Deputy Speaker, this again shows us the difference between the builders and the breakers. Deputy Speaker, the United Nations General Assembly, of which South Africa is a member, took a resolution about safety on farms. It states that a family farmer includes the family farmer as well as his family members and his employees. And it also went further. The United Nations recognized and emphasized that criminal acts perpetrated against farmers, their family members, and their employees actively hinder, impede, and frustrate the pursuit of the goals set out by the Sustainable Development Goals. The UN also resolved that all state parties, which includes South Africa, shall take all reasonable steps and measures to identify, deter, prevent, and combat crimes against farmers, including without limitation prioritizing the prosecution of perpetrators, accomplices, and inciters. Deputy Speaker, what the Democratic Alliance is asking for is that we implement these measures to adhere to the resolutions of the United Nations, that we act urgently to protect the people on our farms and in our rural areas. The people on our farms are the backbone of our country. We thank them for putting food on our tables, and we must do everything in our power to better protect them. Viva to the farmers in South Africa. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Order, Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Aucamp. That then concludes the debate.
Honour.
Honourable Member, the debate has been concluded.
I wanted to raise an order.
Honourable Member, the debate has been concluded.
Good morning, honourable members. We shall now proceed to the last item on the order paper, which is a subject for discussion in the name of the Honourable Nontenja on the femicide crisis in South Africa and how inadequate law enforcement, detective shortages, DNA backlogs, and the failures of the National Prosecuting Authority undermine justice for women. I now recognise the Honourable Nontenja.
Thank you, Honourable House Chair. Honourable House Chair, the epidemic of femicide in South Africa is a national disaster. The epidemic has reached a point where there is no longer a safe space for women and children in our country. It should not matter what women do or where they go. Yet in this country, they face brutal violence simply for existing. Are we saying that women must confine themselves to one place to stay alive? Consider Olorato Mongale, who went on a date and was murdered. And what do we say to the family of little Twekwe, a 7-year-old whose case was failed by our very own justice system? When justice is denied to a child, what hope is left for the women of this nation? Let us not forget the likes of Uinene Mkhwetyana, Tshego Fatsopule, Nostelo Mtebeni, Hannah Cornelius, and countless other women and children who were murdered without mercy. Their stories remind us that no space is safe for women unless we as a nation make it so. We owe them justice, and we owe every woman and child in this country the right to live without fear. Our justice system is failing women and children dismally, from police inefficiencies and intimidation, shortage of detectives, DNA backlog, to the prosecutorial mismanagement of the NPA, as well as the granting of parole to serial offenders. We have a looming national crisis of detective shortages in this country, and it is hampering the timely investigation of cases, which in turn affects the prosecution process. The minister had reported on previous occasions that there is a backlog of 1.9 million case dockets, with many detectives being burdened with between 300 and 500 dockets each, which is untenable. The shortage of detectives is delaying investigations, in turn stalling prosecutions and undermining the entire criminal justice process. With experts like Johan Berger from the Institute of Security Studies warning that the system is on the brink of collapse, even the cases that are being investigated hit a barrier of DNA backlog. The number of backlogs have now reached an unprecedented level as infrastructure issues hinder forensic services. This includes underfunding, poor planning, and inadequate support of existing laboratories. These DNA delays slow detection of offenders and serial offenders and therefore present a significant criminal justice issue that has both personal and societal impact. This merely proves that the decorated justice system that the government brags about is nothing but the weakest link in the value chain. Honorable members, our country is a nightmare for women and children. Every system that's meant to provide justice is disarmed. Worst of all, even the National Prosecuting Authority has shown a troubling pattern of incompetence. The very same institution entrusted with ensuring justice for victims has, time and again, failed them. For example, the recent epic failure when Timothy Omotoso, a pastor accused of atrocious crimes, was released due to procedural misstep by the NPA. The implications of prosecutorial failures are particularly paramount in the context of GBVF, as this country is facing a scourge of GBV, yet conviction rates remain remarkably low. Indeed, the incompetence of the NPA sends a demoralizing message of helplessness to women, leaving them in the lurch and perpetrators unscathed. I thank you.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honorable the Minister of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, honorable members. Thank you immensely for the opportunity to both reflect and contribute to this important debate on one of the gross human rights violations meted against women and girls in a democratic dispensation. This morning presents yet another opportunity for all of us as lawmakers and executive to rally and reignite our all-of-society commitment behind efforts to urgently and responsively redress the past, ongoing, and intersectional ways through which gender-based violence and femicide continues to be reproduced at systemic, structural, household, and individual levels. From Lusikisiki massacre to Limpopo province, 2 women farm workers who were killed and fed to pigs by a farmer, to Olirado, we are witnessing also an online gender-based violence and femicide that happens online. This includes the emergence of coordinated disinformation campaigns that systematically target women in public life, online cyber stalking, non-consensual sharing of intimate images of women, online coordinated harassment campaigns, and gender disinformation and defamation with artificial intelligence-generated deep fakes. At this point, allow me, Chairperson, to express my heartfelt condolences to all victims of gender-based violence and femicide and their families. As Government of South Africa, boots are on the ground to address this scourge and hold perpetrators accountable. The magnitude of the scourge has led to gender-based violence and femicide crisis being prioritized on the national agenda. In 2020, an all-of-society response document called the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide, that is NSP, was drafted and approved by Cabinet. The NSP is a living document fully expressive of the collaborative efforts by government, civil society, private sector, academia, traditional and religious institutions, and organizations in society to address the scourge of gender-based violence and femicide. The NSP is built on 6 key pillars designed to provide a comprehensive framework to address the country's gender-based violence and femicide crisis. Pillar 1 has its central focus on accountability, coordination, and leadership. Pillar 2 talks to prevention and rebuilding social cohesion. And this pillar includes the development of a comprehensive national prevention strategy, which we have already developed and are implementing. Pillar 3 is on justice, safety, and protection, aiming to improve access to survivor support services through victim-centric justice services. Pillar 4 focuses on response, care, and support and healing. And Pillar 5 is on economic power that recognizes that economic power dynamics have adverse impact on women, including economic abuse. It aims to ensure that women have access to economic opportunities and through work corner. Pillar 6, which is the last pillar on our NSP, concentrate on research and information management systems. Under this pillar, Human Science Research Council prevalence study found that 1 in 3 women in South Africa have experienced physical violence in their lives, and 1 in 4 women have experienced physical and/or sexual violence by an intimate partner. Honorable members, additional to the NSP on gender-based violence and femicide, in 2024, President assented into law 2 critical pieces of legislation in response to the actions as required by the NSP. That is the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act 9 of 2024, as well as the Public Procurement Act 28 of 2024. The National Assembly will agree that both legislations are landmark moves that will drive strategic leadership, enforce accountability, ensure socio-economic justice for victims. We welcome the President's State of the Nation address commitment to ensure that the Council is fully functional and properly resourced. The process of appointing the National Council structure is currently in the National Assembly for finalization. Honorable members, alongside the enactment of the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Council legislation, the department is actively embedding the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence into the government planning and budgeting cycles of all government departments, as well as enhancing government systems and processes to ensure a more effective response to gender-based violence crisis. To that effect, the Department of Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities has appointed technical monitors and data capturers who are in provinces and using the launched dashboard to collect data on gender-based violence and femicide from all district municipalities across South Africa. This dashboard is part of Pillar 6 of the End Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Collective. We are intensifying public education campaigns, dialogues, radio programs, and social media messaging through the 365 Days Action Plan. Capacity building initiatives with COCTA as well as SALGA and traditional leadership structures are being implemented. Engagement with schools, taxi operators, the faith sectors, and higher education institutions are part of our work. We have launched 100-day challenge as part of the broad and gender-based violence and femicide movement structured initiatives aimed at accelerating the implementation of National Strategic Plan and using the End Gender-Based Violence Dashboard. The 100-day challenge aims at achieving specific goals within 100 days. We have appointed rapid response teams in localities that have high gender-based violence and femicide prevalence. The aim is for the teams to prevent gender-based violence and femicide by identifying families who are prone to it and act before it happens, where it happens, to intervene well on time. We are also investing on awareness and education programs that promote digital literacy and online safety skills. Acknowledging that men are responsible for gender-based violence and femicide against women, in partnership with many of the organizations, in fact, against women, we are working with traditional and we are in partnership with Men's Forum to implement programs that engage men and boys as primary allies in preventing gender-based violence and femicide. Noting the link between gender-based violence and femicide and alcohol and substance abuse as social ills that require multifaceted approach, the President has since appointed an interministerial committee on gender-based violence and femicide and combating alcohol and substance abuse. We are currently engaged with the midterm review of the 10 years National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, and the report findings will be shared with all institutions and organizations. Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, all the above listed collaborative efforts seek to address but eventually end the scourge of gender-based violence in our country, and we are committed to this. The excellence recorded through the implementation of the NSP programs are daily undermined by the perpetual, deliberate, and planned violence against women and girls by old and young men devoid of moral conscience. Gender-based violence and femicide is criminality, and perpetrators must be jailed and given the maximum sentence. We equally agree that gender-based violence and femicide is an all-of-society battle. It is an all-of-society commitment, a resounding alarm to all society's value and moral systems decay. Women are not objects for manslaughter. Women have a right to safety and security in their own country. Gender-based violence and femicide is an apartheid monster ravaging families, communities, and societies at large. And it needs an all of society to say no to killings of women and girls, no to gender-based violence against women. It needs all of society to entrench in every policy, legislation, culture, language, program, and action that women's rights still remain human rights. The blood of women and girls killed through gender-based violence and femicide cries out to all of society, especially the men of this nation. Enough is enough. Take up your position. Let your voice be heard as men. Let the violence and killings of your mothers, your wives, your sisters and daughters, grandchildren not happen in your name, under your watch. Stand up, men, and be counted to say, not in our name. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Mbele. Honourable Mbele, you are still muted.
Okay, thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, Honourable Deputy Speaker. First of all, ngicela ukubingelela nje ubaba uNqamalala, the President, His Excellency Jacob Zuma, namhlanje. Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members of this House, today I rise not only as a member of Parliament, not only as a woman, but as a voice for thousands of South African women who are screaming into a void, crying out for justice that never comes, for safety that is always promised, for dignity that is constantly denied. We are not gathered here for an academic debate. We are here because the bodies of the women are piling up in homes, in fields, in college fires. South Africa has been called the rape capital of the world, and the femicide rate is 5 times the global average. This is not a crisis, this is a national emergency. The same justice system that is meant to protect them becomes the machinery that fails them at every step. From the moment a woman dares to walk into the police station and say, he raped me, he beat me, the betrayal begins. She is questioned, doubted, often humiliated, and then she is sent home, sometimes back into the arms of the very same man who brutalized her. Let us be clear. Law enforcement is failing the women of this country. Number one, incompetence and indifference as APS. How can we have justice when the Family, Violence, Child Protection and Sexual Offences units are underfunded, understaffed, and in some rural areas completely absent? When rape kits are out of stock, when detectives carry over 200 cases each with no hope of conducting through investigation, the Independent Police Investigation Directorate receives hundreds of complaints of police officers themselves accused of gender-based violence. And yet, how many are convicted? How many are even suspended? The truth is our sisters are not just dying because of violent men. They are dying because this government is too broken and too uncaring to act. Number 2, DNA backlog. Justice delayed is justice denied. At the heart of this failure is the scandal of DNA backlog. Last year alone, over 60,000 DNA samples related to violent crimes, including rape and murder, were stuck in limbo. These are not just samples. These are the voices of the women calling from the grave, begging for justice. Chairperson, in the state, if the state cannot test DNA in time, then the state is complicit in shielding the perpetrators. This is not efficiency. This is institutionalized injustice. Number 3, the National Prosecuting Authority. Oh my God, a broken link in the chain. Even when the cases make it to the NPA, we see a staggering rate of withdrawals, failed prosecutions. Survivors are re-traumatized in courtrooms, cross-examined with brutality, and too often pressured to drop charges altogether. Is this the justice system of a democratic nation? No, honorable members. This is the justice system of a failed state. Number 4, a gender-based violence council that exists only on paper. Government has spoken at length about the national strategy plan on gender-based violence, femicide. Announced in 2020. 4 years later, what progress can we show? Where are the safe houses in the rural areas? Where are the GBV courts with specialized prosecutors and trauma-informed magistrates? This plan is being implemented in slow motion while women are being murdered in real time. Number 5, what must be done? Honorable members, if you are serious about ending this war on women, then you must stop the pretense. Speeches and summits will not save our lives. We need a specialized femicide and GBV unit within SAPC and the NPA, properly resourced, independently monitored, and held to performance targets. Immediate funding and rollout of mobile DNA testing labs, particularly in rural areas. The removal of police officers facing abuse allegations, zero tolerance, must mean something. Mandatory GBV and victim sensitivity training to all police recruits and judicial officers, and most urgently, a national audit of GBV cases withdrawn or unsolved because somewhere in those forgotten files is the next murdered woman. In conclusion, we need a moral reckoning chairperson. The state cannot stand neutral while women bleed. If Parliament continues to make excuses for SAPS and the NPA, then Parliament too has blood in its hands. For the Umkhonto we Sizwe Party, the answer is clear. We will not stay silent. We will not be spectators. We will fight until the justice is not the exemption, but the norm. I thank you. Kwaza Umkhonto Kwaza.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Khubisa Nkaba.
Good morning, Chair. The anchor of our discussion today should be the question, what motivates femicide? If we can figure out what drives femicide, we can figure out how to root out the scourge from our society. Now, I'm not breaking new ground here today. We all know and understand that femicide is rooted in inequality and power imbalances. Far too often, women in South Africa are powerless, which makes them easy prey for weak men who want to feel powerful at any cost, even at the cost of the life of a woman who loves them. Our policing and justice system should be the great equalizer. The mighty arm of the law should be on the side of all victims, letting offenders know that if they prey on the vulnerable, they will not get away with it. But that is not the case in South Africa. House Chair, the speakers before me have set out the issues plaguing the system, but I want to make it real for us. I want to sketch out the reality of a woman in my constituency in Khayelitsha. If she lives in I section, She can walk to the police station on Bonga Drive, but they will turn her away and tell her that her allocated station is Lingeletu West. To get there, she needs taxi fare, which she might not have. Who do these arbitrary demarcations serve? Because they don't serve the women of my constituency. If she makes it to Lingeletu, she's going to find an understaffed dump where she has to wait up to 4 hours for assistance. There is access control at Bonga Drive. There is no such thing at Lingeletu. Her abuser can waltz in and find her there and drag her out before anybody notices. Only when she makes headlines as the next victim of femicide will she receive any attention. But even that is not guaranteed, because the detective investigating her case will have up to 500 dockets on his desk. Even Superman could not properly investigate that caseload. The detective will not have internet access because there's no Wi-Fi at Lingeletu, and the cables don't reach the back offices where the detectives are. Now, I can hear someone thinking, well, he doesn't need internet. He should be on the ground talking to witnesses. Lingeletu doesn't have enough vehicles. The suspect will be in the Eastern Cape ezilalini before they can mobilize a vehicle. More than half the cars at Lingeletu are boarded. They are not fit for use. However, let's assume that they find him before he's run away. There are no holding cells at Lingeletu. There are cases of suspects who were detained and they walked out of the station the same way that they walked in because there's nowhere to hold them securely. Even Minister Mkhunu admitted in response to my parliamentary question that Lingeletu police station is not fit for purpose, but then he tells us it will be fixed in 2029. How many women in Khayelitsha will be dead by then? So let's come back to our case study if our killer has not gone underground. You still need evidence for a conviction. Of course, the DNA collected at the scene will not be tested due to the growing backlog. In that time, the killer will have gone out on bail and found himself a new victim. And when the DNA is finally tested, the case will be drowned in postponements for years and years until the victim's parents are old and gray. The victim will have no peace. Her family will have no peace. There will be no justice for anyone, much less the perpetrator who took her life. We are not going to end the crisis of femicide without 3 key interventions. We need to address the social ills that fuel femicide. We need to address the deficiencies in policing and in the justice system that make victims fear the system or doubt its effectiveness. We also need to ensure that the system is functional enough to act as a deterrent, and that only happens when perpetrators are convinced that they will be caught and punished. In South Africa, there is no reason to fear punishment. The likelihood is that perpetrators will face no consequences for their actions. And this impunity is infectious. It's the reason why so many perpetrators are walking around freely and adding to the perception that femicide is a low-risk activity that carries no cost. That impunity is also the reason why women in danger don't take proactive steps to seek assistance from the police. Reality has taught them that no action will be taken. Instead, they'll anger their abuser and further endanger themselves. We have created a feedback loop that scares victims and emboldens abusers. And until we can flip this around, there's no prospect of ending femicide in South Africa. To turn this around and empower victims and deter abusers, we need a police system that is characterized by a passion for victims that is evident to all and sundry. Now, we know the resource limitations facing our country, but not every problem requires billions to fix. It should not cost too much to ensure that the training police receive includes the imperative of treating victims with care and dignity. It should not cost too much to create victim-centered spaces that make women feel seen and heard. We need to review the training of prosecutors to understand the reasons for the shoddy and tardy case management. It cannot be exorbitant to ensure that police stations have the bare minimum, like vehicles and internet access. We also need enforcement of a directive that ensures that magistrates work a minimum number of hours per day so that cases move efficiently and expeditiously through the system. The lack of urgency that is evident in addressing these basics is just one of the reasons why the femicide crisis isn't just continuing, it's accelerating in South Africa. The fact is that, yes, we need effective policing, a functional NPA, and an efficient court system. But the core of these is one fundamental issue. We need the political will and the urgency to stop femicide, and that needs to be driven by our shared valuing of South African women's lives. Nothing in the past 30 years demonstrates that we do value South African women's lives. It is my prayer, it is my hope, and it is the goal of the Democratic Alliance to see to it that this picture looks fundamentally different under the GNU. We want to give hope to the women of this country. We want them to know that their abusers will be put behind bars, that their killers will serve the time they deserve, and that we are going to do everything in our power to keep them safe. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Muklahla.
Revolutionary greetings to the Commander-in-Chief and President of the EFF, Julius Malema, Commissars, Ground Forces, and fellow South Africans. House Chair, South Africa's femicide crisis is not a tragedy of fate. It is a direct consequence of government neglect, incompetence, cowardice, and systematic failure. Every day, women are abandoned by a justice system that is broken, underfunded, and corrupted to the core by politicians who are driven by their narrow self-interest. There is no integrated justice system in this country, only fragmented departments, empty posts, and shrinking budget. Austerity and state neglect have crippled every institution meant to protect women. Women are dying at an alarming rate in the hands of men, whilst the government watches in silence. House Chair, the South African Police Service DNA backlog now exceeds 140,000 cases. Each case is a symbol of delayed justice of families left in agony while the state remains indecisive. There's no emergency plan, no urgent task team, and no political will to act. Forensic and detective posts remain vacant, and there's no system to track repeat offenders. This is not just incompetence, Chair, it is complicity, and a clear reflection of a state that has lost its ability to protect its citizens. Let me be clear, Chairperson, that these systematic failures are deadly as they cost us human lives. To illustrate this point, let me remind this House that Olerato Mongale's killers are repeat offenders and were granted bail for Schedule 6 offenses because the state failed to oppose it. Prosecutors stayed in silence and the judiciary looked the other way. Only after her death did the minister speak of bail reform. But where was this agency when Unene Morechana, Chirofatjo Bula, Hilary Gadi, and many others were murdered? These are not isolated cases, Chair. They are the daily reality of collapsing system. May their souls rest in peace. Let us not forget the case of Cwecwe. In November 2024, the National Prosecuting Authority refused to prosecute and kept her family in dark. Public outrage forced a reaction, but even then, nothing meaningful was done. Silence is complicity, Chair. It deepens trauma, shields perpetrators, and erodes justice. The Timothy Umutoso case is yet another glaring example: delayed, disorganized, and disgraceful. Witness has been broken, re-traumatized, and ultimately abandoned by the very system meant to protect them. While the NPA blames the judiciary and the judiciary shifts the blame back to NPA, survivors are left to suffer in courtrooms devoid of justice, leadership, and empathy. The judiciary is not innocent, House Chairperson. Former Chief Justice Raymond Zondo acted as a political loyalist, shielding the president and the elite instead of delivering justice. Under his watch, The justice became a fortress for the powerful and a dead end for the poor. We place cautious hope in Chief Justice Mandis Maya, not for continuity, but for real change. The judiciary must purge itself of silence, elitism, and cowardice. There is one leader who deserves recognition, Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi of KZN. He leads with professionalism, integrity, and agency, often acting decisively before the media spotlight arrives. South Africa needs more leaders of his caliber and far fewer who embody the inertia and failures of leadership, such as Shamila Batoyi. House Chair, under Shamila Batoyi, the National Prosecuting Authority has become a symbol of sabotage. Key cases have been dropped, prosecution have decayed, and the office remains silent when the nation demands accountability. Batoyi was not appointed to deliver justice, but to shield President Cyril Ramaphosa and the powerful elite. Her silence on the Phala scandal, her consistent failure to act on gender-based violence, and her retreat from politically sensitive matters speak louder than any justification her office can offer. This morning on Morning Live, House Chair Shamila Batoyi adopted that the NPA is infiltrated by powerful forces. The EFF will write to the Speaker, the NPA, and the Portfolio Committee of Justice, demanding that she comes before Parliament to account. Our long-held position is now vindicated, and she must explain her statement. We cannot wait for her exit to that office. That's why we are saying Batoyi must go. He must go very fast. The so-called GNU is not about solution. It is a unity of silence, paralysis, and elite collusion. The EFF demand the following urgent intervention: the immediate lifting of the moratorium on forensic services, investigations, and prosecutions to restore the functionality of the criminal justice system, the establishment of the dedicated gender-based violence court system, staffed with specialized personnel and supported by trauma-informed services to ensure justice for survivors, a transparent, independent audit of the national DNA backlog with mandatory monthly progress reports tabled before Parliament, the creation of a centralized national database to track and prevent repeat offenders across all provinces, closing the gaps exploited by serial perpetrators. In a nutshell, Chair, the cries of women, grieving families, and terrified communities are not background noise. They are a national outcry for justice. If Parliament continues to delay meaningful action, it will not merely be indifferent, but it will be complicit in every life lost thereafter. I thank you, Chairperson. Amandla.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Nkosi Kabekulu.
Thank you, Chair. The IFP rises today to express grave concern over the unchecked femicide crisis in our country, a national emergency that continues to rob mothers, daughters, and sisters of their lives and dignity. For many women in South Africa, home is not a place of safety. Police stations are not places of refuge, and the courtroom is not a place for justice. In the face of trauma, they are too often met with inadequate policing, investigative failures, and institutional indifference. As the IFP, we believe in the people's-centered justice system, one that serves with indignity, compassion, and agency. But what we are witnessing is the opposite. Shortages of trained detectives, massive DNA backlog, and failures at the National Prosecuting Authority are not a mere bureaucratic delays. They are a betrayal of every woman who has cried for justice and received silence in return. In KwaZulu-Natal recently, a brutal killing of 17-year-old Snethemba Mpele near Richmond shocked us to the core. Her family alleges that police initially ignored their pleas for help, and today her killer remains unidentified. Her dreams forever erased. How many more women must be buried before the system responds with the agency it demands? We call on this House to support the IFP's call for the professionalization of the SEPs with a specialized GBV and a femicide unit across all provinces. There should be the restructuring and resourcing of forensic laboratories to eliminate DNA backlogs. Moreover, more oversight mechanisms that hold law enforcement and the NPA accountable for failures to prosecute violent crime against women, as well as the establishment of a national register of unresolved femicide cases, so we never forget the names we've failed. Femicide is not a women's problem. It is a crisis of leadership, a crisis of justice, and unless we act now, history will judge us for our silence. May we choose action over apathy, justice over delay, and life over a difference. Over difference. I thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honourable Souls. Honourable Souls, are you on the platform? Otherwise, see, Honourable Souls is on.
Trying to get. Am I audible, Speaker?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Greetings in the name of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. According to the Medical Research Council policy brief, every 6 hours a woman is killed. In another research paper titled Silent Witnesses Unveiling the Epidemic of Femicides in the Northwest Tswane, South Africa, a decade of analysis, the youngest victim was a newborn and the oldest was 80 years old. The median age was 44. The highest age groups of femicides in this study were the age group of 30 to 39 years old, closely followed by group 18 to 29, 15 to 17, and 40 to 49. These four age groups accounted for 92% of all femicides during the study period. It is a fact that inadequate law enforcement, detective shortages, DNA backlogs, and failures at the National Prosecuting Authority undermine justice for women. But a poor judicial system, especially our criminal justice system, is a major contributor to this fact. Case in point, 3-year-old Tamia Buerta found murdered at the Liederberg school field in Paarl. After 2 years, there has still not been a court hearing despite police investigation. On 14th May, a 16-year-old girl from Smarty Town, Chanel Plykes, went missing. It is alleged that she was killed by her 19-year-old boyfriend who already killed 2 people before. Question is, how is it that he was not in prison at the time of the alleged murder? To make things worse, the community and the Patriotic Alliance volunteers had to assist the police in the search, and it is this patriotic effort that resulted in the discovery of a deceased body in a field that is presumed to be the body of Ms. Plykes. When we realized that DNA testing through the government processes will take months, once again the Patriotic Alliance intervened, and our President, His Excellency Gayton McKenzie, made funding available to immediately pay for the DNA testing. And as a result, the family will find closure now in a matter of days. This is a display of the heart of politics and political will. As I conclude, I must add on a positive note, or end on a positive note, and congratulate the KwaZulu-Natal SEPs under the leadership of Provincial Commissioner Lieutenant General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi for their great work in seeking to solve the case of university student Olorato Mohale. It is disappointing that the mother of one of the accused, who was killed on Friday in a shootout with police in a residential complex, gave him a tip-off that police was looking for him. We call on all patriotic South Africans to join the alliance for a safe and secure South Africa. All women are God's only door for the human race to enter Earth. It is our duty to protect, guard, and only enter into this door with express permission when we seek to enjoy the physical delicacies prepared at the table of enjoyment. Muni paisane. Ayo. Salute. Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Denner.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, this is not the first time, nor is it that we've had this discussion in this House. Sitting was convened and a national plan to tackle GBV and femicide was enacted, with sexual offences courts being opened and upgraded and certain focused areas made, efforts or rather, made in the way of stepping up the fight against this absolute war on women in South Africa. Much was said, less was done. But are these efforts enough? Clearly not. Can more be done? Absolutely. Is a lack of reactive resources the only problem? No. After Uyenene, we had thousands of women and girls next to whose graves grieving loved ones were asking the question, why her? Recently, the senseless murder of Oloratu Mongale once again focused the spotlight on the fact that women in South Africa are under siege. It also reminded us of the fact that in South Africa, there are people who do not consider the value of a human life to be worth more than the value of a cell phone. En terwyl vroue in ons land letterlik altyd oor ons skouers moet kyk, iets waaraan ons al so gewoond is dat ons dit nie eers meer agterkom nie, het ons onvoldoende, ontoereikende, onbeholpe en ongelukkig in sekere gevalle ook onwillige departemente, entiteite, politici en amptenare wat veronderstel is om vroue in Suid-Afrika te beskerm en te bemagtig. En moet my nie verkeerd verstaan nie, voorsitter, ek veralgemeen nie. Ek weet daar is baie wat baie doen met die min tot hulle beskikking en ons dank en eer hulle daarvoor. Maar terwyl hierdie probleem nie werklike volgehoue prioriteit deur die bank geniet nie, sal niks verander nie. The DNA backlog has been a problem for years and still it stands at 140,000. We welcome recent efforts to tackle this, but there have been efforts in the past. Assuring us that despite the blunder that was made of the Omotoso case, the NPA is doing good work and we applaud the hard-working prosecutors for that, we really do. But the news headlines this very week alerted us yet again about another case that was struck from the roll and accused murderers that were set free to disappear and probably murder again due to poor investigative work by the state and repeated postponements in court. No justice, only despair for the victim's family and those who will follow the victim's fate. No, Chair, this cannot go on like this. The justice cluster, in particular the police and the NPA, has to be capacitated as a matter of urgency. Meer polisiebeamptes, meer aanklaers, behoorlike opleiding en bemagtiging, meer hulpbronne, meer landroste, meer howe, meer verantwoordbaarheid, hoffasiliteite wat werk, meer, en ons het dit nou nodig. The Departments of Health, Social Development and Basic Education also have very important roles to play in as far as the social well-being and empowerment of women go. Not only our girl children, but also our boy children who have to be empowered to become men who respect and protect, not abuse, rape and murder. The issue of femicide in South Africa has reached a point where something will have to give, not only the victims. More needs to be done, and it has to be done better. And it has to be done now. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Dr. Letlape.
Thank you, Chair. It's amazing. I come and I speak to you today as a member of Action SA, also as a person with femicide. Just over a year ago, I lost my daughter to femicide. And what troubles me is that lead to femicide, where women are commoditized. One of the honorables spoke about the social ills in our society. But in actual fact, women are endangered by the social norms in our society. And what we need to do is to change those norms. When you look at our constitution, the section 31 of the constitution that talks about cultural, religious, and linguistic communities. Now, in pursuance of those rights that are practiced by the different groups, They may not be exercised in a manner inconsistent with any provisions of the Bill of Rights. And unless we do that, unless we ensure that, for example, as we fund traditional leaders, as we fund COCTA, we ask them to reform their cultural values, their norms, their religious prescripts to align with the Bill of Rights. Isn't it ironic that 2,000 years later, we still have to see a female pope in a Catholic Church? We may have to wait another 2,000 years unless the norms are changed. We have things in society that belittle women. We have institutions of marriage that are not partnerships between man and wife, that are constructs of husband and wife, which are derogatory and do not uphold the Bill of Rights. Unless girl children and women are treated as equal in the home, unless they are safe in the home, they cannot be safe anywhere. Our society raises angry young men that end up as murderers as older men. And unless we look into what is it that makes men think that they can own other human beings, we will never get on top of this. I accept the challenges of the police, but if you do not decrease production, police are after the fact. And I agree, if you want to end the backlogs of DNA testing, let collection be the duty of forensics, but let there be a mechanism where they hand over the testing to the Department of Health. And the health department is then held responsible for ensuring that the DNA results are made available. DNA testing is technical, it's a health issue, it's not a police matter. There needs to be cooperation, but there need to be structured protocols so that we can begin to get rid of that backlog. Unless we change the way we value our children, we treat our girl children and our boy children the same in families as equals, upholding human rights. You protect your sister and you protect the daughter from next door. You don't protect your sister and abuse the doctor from next door. Unless we change the norms, unless we align religious, cultural, and institutional practices, and we uphold the Bill of Rights, women will not be safe anywhere. They are not safe at school, they're not safe in church, they're not safe in religious institutions, they are not safe at work. Dare I say, they are not even safe in Parliament. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I now recognize the Honorable Reverend Meshwe.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Today we address femicide, which is both an epidemic and a crisis that has plagued our nation for far too long. South Africa has one of the highest femicide rates in the world, with 11 women murdered every day, equating to 1 woman killed every 2 hours. This is not just a statistic, it is a national emergency and crisis that demands immediate and decisive action. Despite numerous policies and public condemnations, femicide continues to be treated with mere lip service by the authorities. Women live in constant fear, forced to take extreme precautions simply to survive. The tragic case of Olarato Mungale, a 30-year-old vet student who was murdered after accepting a lunch invitation, is a stark reminder of the dangers women face daily in this country. Her story is not an isolated incident. It is a reflection of the systematic failure to protect women in South Africa. While our government has made commitments to combat gender-based violence, the reality is that enforcement remains weak. The South African Police Service mobilized all its resources, including the Family Violence, Child Protection, and Sexual Offences Unit, yet that's only after the fact. Femicide rates remain alarmingly high. The lack of urgency in addressing this epidemic has sparked outrage among citizens who demand more than just promises. We must look to international examples of success in overcoming GBV. Spain, for instance, has implemented specialized courts for gender-based violence, ensuring swift justice for victims. Argentina has introduced femicide units within law enforcement, dedicated to investigating and preventing gender-related killings. Georgia has established a femicide watch, a mechanism to monitor and prevent femicide through data collection and analysis. These measures have proven effective in reducing femicide rates, and South Africa must follow suit. We call on government to take decisive action in establishing specialized femicide courts to expedite cases and ensure justice. The ACDP urge the implementation of a national femicide watch to track cases and identify patterns from data. While working with the SAPS, we need to strengthen police accountability by enforcing harsher penalties for negligence in handling femicide cases. There is also a need for an increase in funding for shelters and support services for women and children suffering from gender-based violence. We cannot afford to delay, Chairperson. The women of South Africa deserve more than empty promises. They deserve safety, justice, and dignity. Let us act now to end femicide and build a nation where women can live without fear. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Kwankwa.
Thank you ever so much, House Chair. Hello, sorry.
Reverend Meshwe, you must please just mute now.
Asseblief. Dankie voorzitter. Thank you very much. Without strengthening law enforcement and providing more funding to women's organizations and organizations in general that support the cause of women, the scourge of femicide will continue to rise. The entire justice system, as previous speakers have already indicated, is failing women dismally, from police inefficiencies and intimidation, shortage of detectives, DNA backlogs, to prosecutorial mismanagement of the NPA. We need more, we believe as a party that we need more survivor and victim support. For example, with all the thousands of women who are raped every quarter in South Africa, we are of the firm view that having 66 Tutuzela centers to provide pretrial services, psychological, medical, and legal services to victims of gender-based violence is enough. The aim should be to reduce secondary victimization and improve conviction rate. However, thousands of women in rural areas are still excluded from these services, and they experience secondary victimization from insensitive police officers who have not been trained to be sensitive towards rape issues. Umzekelo ntoba kwezinye police stations around the country, there are cubicles ekuthiwa zeze-gender-based violence. Kufuneka abantu bahambe bayoma babe nestigma sokuthi xa behleli kwezi festile baziwe bonke ukuthi bayangonjwa ukuze wonke umuntu ayazi ingxaki yomuntu. Ifana nqwa lento nezikhonteyina kwezi kliniki zisemidansane nezinye ezincinci zibekwe ngaphandle ekuthiwa zeze-HIV/AIDS patients, meaning siyabastigmatize nangakumbi abantu. Ibonisa loo nto a lack of sensitivity and understanding ukuthi into ze-gender-based violence nento ezinokugula kwabantu zihamba njani. Despite the many attempts and the laws that have been enacted to try and strengthen the fight against gender-based violence, sexual assaults and brutal murders of women continue. On a daily basis, we wake up to stories of women who have disappeared after they were with their partners, only for them to be discovered later, bodies of them to be discovered later, and very little progress being made in terms of trying to resolve those issues. We need a multi-pronged approach and strategy to try and end femicide in South Africa in particular. There needs to be better policing, which is needed everywhere in the country for all forms of violence, where a dedicated femicide unit for case management will be established. We need well-resourced laboratories to end the DNA backlog. Capacity grants from government will fast-track the backlog reduction. SAPS must establish a recruiting and retraining strategy to swiftly address the shortage of detectives, and the entire MP must be strengthened with more resources to recruit skilled lawyers and improve the prosecutorial process to ensure that those who continue to kill and victimize and violate our women rot in jail. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Kwankwa. The next speaker is the Honorable Garner.
Baie dankie, voorzitter. Honorable members, fellow South Africans. Justice must not only be done, it must be seen and felt to be done. We face a crisis. Women in our country live in fear. Our daughters are afraid to leave home. Our mothers and grandmothers lie awake, fearing that the knock on the door will bring not just robbery, but rape or murder. Our sisters cannot even date without fearing violence. Justice is meaningless unless it is swift, certain, and fair. But in South Africa today, it is none of those things, especially in gender-based violent cases. Detection and conviction rates remain alarmingly low. Too many women report crimes and are met with silence and delay. DNA evidence is a vital tool in solving these crimes, but processing delays, sometimes lasting years, allow rapists and murderers to roam free. This backlog is not a technical problem. It is a crisis that costs lives. The numbers are staggering. In just 1 year, the number of reported rape cases rose from 31,979 to 41,991. Over 41,000 reported rapes in our country. South Africa is more dangerous for women than a war zone. We must act. And as revealed to ourselves, Rising Mzansi, there is a shortage of over 8,000 detectives. How can we expect justice without investigators or trained prosecutors? This House must take responsibility. We must hold the executive accountable. We must push for action that, one, halves the murder rate within 5 years, two, triples the rape convictions, and three, trains and deploys more detectives and forensic staff. We owe it to the women of South Africa to build a justice system they can trust, one that protects them, not one that fails them.
Thank you, Honorable Garner. You now released to go and have a bit of pasta, and all best of luck with your race on Sunday.
Thank you,
Honorable
Chairperson.
members. The next speaker could be from the ATM. Is there someone on the platform? If not, then I recognize the Honorable Tsotsetsi.
Thank you, Chair. Gender-based violence and femicide are a grave issue in many countries around the world, including our own. Many interventions to address this phenomenon have been rolled out by government. However, reducing the rates of violence remains a serious challenge. To ensure a coordinated national response to the pandemic of gender-based violence, government approved the National Strategic Plan on GBVF. The plan sets out to provide a cohesive strategic framework to guide the national response to gender-based violence. The plan has 6 overarching pillars for implementation. While progress is noted, it is reported to be slow. What is key in addressing GBV is acknowledging that the overwhelming majority of instances of violence are perpetuated by men against women. If it is generally accepted that in the fight against gender-based violence, men cannot be left behind. The focus in GBF prevention has therefore increasingly turned to working with men, with interventions motivated by a desire to address the role of men in violence perpetration and recognition that masculinity and gender-related social norms are implicated in violence. One such intervention is the One Man Can. The One Man Can is a campaign initiated by Sonke Gender Justice, an NGO working to prevent gender violence in Southern Africa, in partnership with government and various national and international organizations. The campaign is designed to support men and boys to end domestic and sexual violence, to promote healthy, equitable relationships between genders, and to reduce the spread and impact of HIV and AIDS. The OMC program is one of few masculinities focused interventions currently being implemented in this country, and it is being structured and implemented in line with the current best practices, literature, and understanding of such interventions. Honorable Chair, the historical context in families and family policy in South Africa is critical when considering GBV. Our stretched secular labor migration violently disrupted the family structure. These disruptions meant that biological parents, especially fathers, were not living with their dependent children in the same households on daily basis. The absence of these fathers in the boy's life has had a devastating effect. In many cases, the system left the boy child without a role model. The presence of the role model who act as an examples of positive masculinity is highlighted as an aspect which can make which can make interventions more successful, along with the existence of a supportive peer group. Stable and healthy families are at the heart of strong societies. It is within the family environment that an individual's psychological, emotional, and physical development occurs. The absence of a stable, nurturing family environment has profoundly damaging impact on the individual, often leading to behavior which is profoundly damaging to society. Chairperson, we take note of the scathing comments by Judge Skuman in the Omotoso judgment. The judgment decried the poor quality of prosecution and cross-examination by the NPA. In a further expression of this disappointment, the chairperson of the Commission on Gender Equality, Advocate Ntabiseng Sepanya Mohale, told the SABC that the weaknesses on the quality of prosecution by the NPA in such a high-profile matter was a microcosm of what is possibly happening in gender-based violence cases in the lower courts across the country. It is clear that the NPA needs to upscale its seriousness, more especially around the GBF cases. In the 2023-2024 reporting period, 74% of the 8,621 new sexual offences matters registered at the regional courts constituted rape cases. These numbers almost doubled those of 2021 and 2022. Guess these numbers. These are actually human beings. Surely this scenario cannot be normal in the progressive country. In 2022, President Cyril Ramaphosa signed into law 3 acts to prevent and combat gender-based violence. These acts are commonly referred to as the 3 acts. Since enacted, some progress has been recorded. In 2024, the National Council on Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Act was signed into law, and the national structure to oversee a coordinated response established. In our election manifesto, we committed to taking a comprehensive approach to fighting crime through the integrated violence and crime prevention strategy. We continue to implement our resolution. We have always advocated for a victim-centered approach to matters of GBV. We have 65 Tutuzela care centers nationally, which are a one-stop facility which were introduced as part of South Africa's anti-rape strategy. These TCCs are aimed at reducing secondary victimization. Matters reported at the TCC site increased from 36,813 in 2022-2023 to 41,148 in 2023-2024, showing an increment of 12 12%. 2 additional TCC sites were established in the last financial year. 14 courts were upgraded in line with the regulations relating to sexual offences courts and established a sexual offences court. There are 44 GBV shelters in 52 districts, and efforts are being made by the police to provide a more victim-friendly service. The president announced the establishment of 16 additional sexual offences court within the financial year. Towards the disability-centric court system, the Department of Justice further upgraded additional 66 courts in line with the minimum service standards for the strategy on reasonable accommodation and measures to access justice for court users with disability at the lower courts. This has brought the national footprint of the disability-centric courts to 145. We are concerned about the shortage of psychologists and physio and the psychologist and psychiatrist for GBV victims. While there are social workers and even GBV specialized social workers, psychologists and psychiatrists play a crucial role, particularly in cases where victims reported sexual offences years after the incident. Their expert knowledge is necessary for courts to understand the long-term trauma experienced by victims. Special attention needs to be paid to victims with mental disabilities who are recognized as vulnerable groups of society. Honorable Chair, we agree fully with former UN Secretary General, Honorable Ban Ki-moon, when he said, and I quote, that there is one universal truth applicable to all countries, cultures, and communities. That truth is that violence against women is never acceptable, never excusable, and never tolerable.
Thank you,
I
Honorable
thank you.
Member. Is there a speaker on behalf of Al Jamaa in this debate? If not, I call on the NCC, the PIC, the UAT, the Good Party. Then I recognize the Honorable Schikkerling.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Good afternoon, honourable members. Today I rise again, not just in sorrow, but in fury, because once again, South Africa has failed one of its daughters, and this time her name is Olorato Mongale. She did everything right. She was cautious, she was vigilant, she followed the rules, she tried to protect herself, but those who were meant to protect her were the ones that failed her. The state, the police, the courts, they didn't. And now her life has been cut short, her light extinguished, brutally ripped away from her family and friends by men who should never have been walking free. Olorato was brutally murdered exactly in the way that so many South African women fear daily. And what makes this even more unbearable is this. The two men accused of killing her were granted bail in April this year. This is not a case of we didn't know, we knew and we did nothing. Brigadier Atlenda Mate confirmed that these men had been terrorizing women across the country, linked to cases of murder, kidnapping and robbery in Mpumalanga, the Free State, the Northwest, Limpopo and Gauteng. Despite this violent history, they were released. Despite every red flag, they walked free. And Olorato, despite her efforts, was left exposed and helpless. Honourable members, this is not an isolated case. This is a pattern. This is the reality. This is femicide in South Africa, a national emergency. And when the state let a woman's killer walk free, it becomes complicit in her death. This House cannot keep offering condolences while doing nothing to change the very system that kills women twice, first with a crime and then with a silence. We cannot mourn on a Monday, hold a summit on a Tuesday, and move on by Wednesday. And so I ask, What are we telling our mothers, our sisters, our daughters? Don't go to the post office. Don't go to school. Don't go for a run. Don't go on a date. Don't go home. Don't go anywhere because we can't protect you. Is that the message we are sending? That the price of being a woman in this country is death? Let me say this clearly. Bail in cases of gender-based violence and femicide should never be the first reaction. It must only be granted with the strictest scrutiny and only when there's no threat to the victim or the public. But the problem is bigger than bail. Our law enforcement is simply not equipped or responsive enough to meet the scale of this crisis anymore. Police officers lack proper training to deal with gender-based violence. Survivors are still being turned away, dismissed, or told to go home to their very abusers. There's no trauma-informed approach. Domestic violence protocols are inconsistently applied, leaving survivors re-traumatized and unprotected. The shortage of trained detectives and undercapacitated family and child protection units are crippling investigations. GBV and femicide cases are often handled by overburdened officers without the time, tools, or expertise to investigate properly. Perhaps one of the most disgraceful failures is the ongoing backlog in DNA processing. Thousands of rape, murder, and assault cases are sitting in limbo because critical forensic evidence has not been analyzed. These delays destroy the chances of conviction, allowing repeat offenders to continue their crimes unchecked. And even when arrests are made, the NPA is under severe strain. Cases collapse due to poor docket preparation, missing evidence, and prosecutorial delays. The conviction rate for GBV and femicide remains shockingly low in our country. The SAPS must urgently upgrade their outdated computer systems. Much of the work is still done manually, resulting in inefficiencies and delays. The SAPS must ensure full technological integration with Home Affairs, the Justice Department, and Correctional Services so that critical information can be shared seamlessly across the entire criminal justice system. We cannot police or prosecute our way out of this crisis without political will, colleagues, resources, and accountability. We must confront the truth. GBV and femicide are not just criminal justice failures, they are constitutional failures, failures to uphold women's rights to safety, dignity, and life. If our current laws do not protect women, then we must change them. Today, I call for 5 urgent measures: a judicial review of bail decision-making processes in all GBV and femicide cases, a requirement that victims and families are consulted before bail is granted in serious GBV matters, the establishment of a specialized femicide court role to prioritize and properly prosecute these cases, the creation of a national memorial register for victims of femicide so that names like Olorato Mongale are never forgotten and never repeated, the strengthening of judicial and police training to ensure trauma-informed, victim-centered justice. Let's be clear, Olorato Mongale's death is not only on the hands of her killers, it is also on the hands of the justice system that knew better and did nothing, and it's on all of us if we continue to do nothing. We have already failed Olorato Mongale. We have already failed Bianca Boyson, Elizabeth Klaster, Sipukazi Boy, Motlale Pule Kau, Chanel Plaikis, and so many others. Let us not allow another name to be added to the growing list. Let this parliament no longer be a place of empty speeches and symbolic outrage. Let it be the place where justice for women begins. Mudume ale tsegofatse. I thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is the Honorable Deputy Minister of Police, Dr. Boshielo.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chair, honorable members, ladies and gentlemen, Realocha. The women, children, and the disabled people of this nation are currently facing a grave threat, a violence and brutal conflict is ongoing against these vulnerable groups in our country. While this situation has its own distinct causes and characteristics, gender-based violence and femicide is indicative of a larger crisis of violence within our society. In recent weeks, we have seen many acts of violence perpetrated against our women and children, and daily lawlessness continues to undermine the very fabric of our society, manifesting itself through violent crimes directed at this vulnerable group. During the release of our crime stats of the fourth quarter, in terms of rape, rape increased by 0.3% to 10,688 victims. Sexual assault decreased by 0.2 to 1,872. Attempted sexual offenses decreased by minus 9.4 to 656, and contact sexual offenses increased by to 236. And in terms of the community reported serious crime, we recorded 375,007, and the highest contributing provinces are Gauteng, Western Cape, KwaZulu-Natal, and Eastern Cape. Honorable Chair, the fight against gender-based violence and femicide is a national priority for the South African Police Service, and for that reason, maximum resources have been deployed to investigate GBVF cases and track down perpetrators. When the case of the late Miss Olorato Mongale was brought to our attention on Sunday evening, we immediately roped in the South African Police Service National Anti-Kidnapping Task Team and the Gauteng Province Investigation Unit to assist in the investigation, and in no time, the Volkswagen Polo and the two perpetrators were arrested, and were able to also get the body within 2 hours, which shows how much we take serious the issue of the gender-based violence. And the perpetrator, Pilangeng Kosi Mapianya, was found in an apartment in possession of more than 27 ID smart cards and about 20 cell phones. And Pilangeng Kosi and Bongani Mtumkulu were working together, and they were a syndicate that was targeting women in various malls across the country. It is what we call a romance dating scam, where they will pretend to like or fall in love with these young women, and once the ladies agree to meet them in person, they will prepare to kidnap and then rob them of the money. That's why on Thursday, we called all the intelligence and JCPS cluster departments, and we had a very thorough discussion on cybercrime and cybersecurity, because our women, young women, are falling victims, and we need to really make sure that they are safe. The investigations now on this case are standing at 20, because people are now coming out and they are linking to these two criminals. And women across the country have positively identified the pair that kidnapped and robbed them. And the Ministry of Police, as a result, convened all the state agencies, as I said, on Thursday, and agreed on how to integrate our operations to deal with this scourge and improve our technological system as whole government. The killing of our daughter, Likona Foss, was very, very devastating. When I went to the family and with them, there were no ways to even comfort them. What happened to her should never happen to any child. She was brutally killed and her private pets mutilated. We had to call our provincial occult unit, which specializes in hate crime and mutilation of bodies. The community came in numbers to support the family, and I was impressed that irrespective of political affiliations, the ANC, the EFF, the MKP were there together saying, putting their difference aside and saying not with our children. Of recent, We have also observed that some parents are helping their children to escape from police, and we are going to arrest whoever is doing this because they're defeating the end of justice. And we have will come looking for you and make sure that you are arrested. We have also observed that the community of Westbury in Gauteng and many others are throwing stones to the police after they have embarked on stop and search operation and arrested a man carrying drugs. Instead of helping and seeing that we are serious in terms of dealing with this sketch, they attacked our police, and our police had to retaliate because if they have taken any action, we would have gone to the same Marikana situation, which we didn't want to. But in the process, our police are being killed and also injured. In Umtata, 2 police officers were injured when students pelted our officers with stones and burnt our cars, resources that we do not have. And Chairperson, the South African Police Service has issued national instruction related to gender-based violence and femicide, which mandate strict adherence by police officials in making matters concerning domestic violence, sexual offenses, victim empowerment, trafficking in person, and the care and protection of children as a priority. Any instances of non-compliance will be considered as violation of conduct. In collaboration with the Civilian Secretariat for the Police Service, the SAPS have established a joint compliance forum to oversee and adhere to the police adhere to the Domestic Violence Act 1998 Act 116 of 1998. House Chair, in partnership with tavern owners, the SAPS initiated the GBEVF Tavern Project in the 2023 fiscal year to combat instances of GBV-related violence among patrons and to foster a culture of mutual protection in entertaining venues. These initiatives involve identifying taverns located in the top 30 GBV hotspot areas, developing targeted GBV-related messaging for this establishment, commissioning mural artwork to convey the message, and facilitating roundtable discussions among patrons, tavern owners, and relevant stakeholders. The SSPS also have, together with the Department of Basic Education, jointly came with project to be implemented in school. It's called School Safety Program to ensure safer learning environment for children to deal with crime and violence affecting schools. The SAPS is striving to ensure protection of children and enjoyment of their fundamental human rights in collaboration with other key government departments and civil society organizations, initiated program to build safe spaces in communities for children. The SAPS GPF action plan include ongoing training for frontline members to enhance their response capabilities, addressing the DNA backlog by forensic science laboratory, establishment of GBV desks across all police stations. Victim-friendly services are now provided in most stations, and additional resources are continuously allocated to family violence, child protection, and sexual offenses. Chairperson, we have embarked on community involvement in terms of crime, but also in particular the GBVF. I agree with Honorable Letlape and Honorable Sotetsi that this is mainly a societal issue and we really have to deal with that. People are not raped by police. They are raped by their partners. They are raped or killed by people which they know. They are raped and killed in their homes. And I agree with them that we really have to look down to see how best we deal with that. We were in Toyando where we met traditional leaders, church leaders, NGOs, academics from Univen, MECs, executive mayors and school children to see what we can do in order to deal with the issue of the sketch. And I was
Thank you, Dr. Boshelu. Your time has now expired.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Honorable Nontenja, it's your opportunity to reply to the debate now.
Thank you, Chair. Honorable Chair, day in and day out, a helpless body of brutally murdered women is found. These are not merely statistics. These are realities of femicide. These are realities that femicide knows no political divides, that femicide is a national crisis that needs a united nation to combat it. We are the lawmakers, meaning that we must also amend laws that no longer serve their purpose. When a perpetrator violates someone's rights, he must forfeit his rights. Our magistrates and judges must be able to correctly interpret the human rights section of our Constitution, not to favor the criminals at the expense of the victims. Not to grant bail because it is their right to get bail. Granting parole because it's their right to get parole. What about the rights of the victims who will never stand up and talk for themselves and their families? Honorable House Chair, we may have 1,000 pillars on a piece of paper gathering dust somewhere. What is required here is action. The UTM calls on all the affected departments to work in a synergy to ensure that we combat the femicide in our time. I thank you.
Malbongwe.
Igama lamakhosikazi.
Libongwe.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Do I still have time, Chair? Do I still have more time? Oh.
Honorable Nontenja, have you concluded? My apologies, I was kicked off momentarily.
Yes, Honorable House Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable members, that concludes this debate and the business of this mini-plenary. This mini-plenary will now rise. Have a good weekend.
Thanks, House Chair.